Brother's fiancé demanded $2.5 million mansion as a wedding gift. It's just the classy thing to do. When I said no, she whispered loud enough, "No wonder you're still alone." My family laughed. I felt my face burn. I walked out. The next morning, they woke up to empty bank accounts and a note, "Respect isn't free." This happened a few weeks ago, and I still can't shake the feeling of betrayal, humiliation, and maybe even a sense of rightness. Long story short, my brother Jared is getting married to a woman named Tessa, and things have gone from awkward to downright uncomfortable. At a family gathering, Tessa demanded that I buy them a $2.5 million mansion as a wedding gift. Yes, you read that right, because she said it was classy and expected. When I politely said no, she casually whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "No wonder you're still alone." I walked out, embarrassed, but what happened the next morning was something none of them could have anticipated. My family woke up to empty bank accounts and a note that simply said, "Respect isn't free." I've always been the kind of person who prefers to keep the peace. Growing up in a close-knit family, I'd never been one to rock the boat. But something about Tessa rubbed me the wrong way from the very first time I met her. She was everything I wasn't: sleek, polished, and relentlessly focused on appearance. I'm not saying she was a bad person, but she had this presence that made me feel small. Jared, my older brother, has always been a simple guy. He grew up in a modest house, played soccer on weekends, and had a steady job in finance. He was the kind of guy who would happily spend an afternoon at the local diner with me, laughing at bad jokes and reminiscing about childhood. But once Tessa entered the picture, that changed. He became distant, more focused on his looks, his social media image, and his status in life. At first, I thought it was just a phase, something that would blow over. But it didn't. Their engagement didn't surprise me at first. Jared had always been the one to settle down easily. But there was a shift in him once the engagement was official, and it wasn't the kind of shift I expected. He seemed more anxious, more concerned with appearances. And Tessa? She seemed determined to make her mark, not just on him but on our entire family. It was subtle at first, comments about how we should dress better at family gatherings, how our house didn't look up to par when they came over. Jared didn't seem to notice. In fact, he'd laugh it off, saying, "You know how she is," whenever I'd express concern. But deep down, I could feel the divide growing. Fast forward a few weeks, and I found myself in their living room with a handful of family members, helping them finalize wedding plans. Tessa was in her element, showing off her latest Pinterest board, going over what kind of centerpieces she wanted, and making sure everyone knew just how extravagant the wedding was going to be. It was already set to be in the Maldives, a location that felt far out of reach for most people. I should have seen the red flags earlier when she casually mentioned how much money they had to spend. It wasn't in a proud way, more like a way of making sure everyone knew what they had. I could tell that no matter what, she would make sure her wedding was the biggest and most luxurious one anyone in our family had ever seen. But when the conversation took a turn, I was left absolutely stunned. "We've been thinking," she started, her eyes gleaming with what I can only describe as self-assurance, "about the kind of gift we want. You know, a wedding gift that reflects our life together and sets the tone for the future." I nodded, unsure of where she was going with this. "That sounds nice," I replied cautiously, not wanting to sound uninterested. Jared, who had been sitting beside her, looked up from his phone for the first time that evening, eyes distracted but listening. "It's just that," she continued, clearly enjoying the spotlight, "we really feel that a home should be the ultimate wedding gift. And not just any home. We want something significant. A mansion, really." I didn't quite process what she said at first. "A mansion?" I repeated, not sure if I heard her correctly. I could feel my eyebrows furrowing. Tessa nodded, her smile unwavering. "Yes, exactly. A $2.5 million mansion. You know, something that speaks to the life we'll have, status, class, all of it. It's just the classy thing to do." I could feel my stomach drop. This wasn't just some innocent suggestion. This was an expectation. You're serious? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Oh, of course. It's the kind of gift that sets the tone for everything, she said, as if it were a perfectly normal thing to ask. I glanced at Jared. He was looking down again, avoiding eye contact. He seemed distant. As though the whole thing wasn't worth engaging with. The Jared I knew wouldn't have stayed quiet in a situation like this. He would have laughed and told her to dial it down. But instead, he stayed silent, clearly uncomfortable. Jared, you really think this is appropriate? I asked, my voice rising despite myself. The weight of the request was settling in, and I couldn't stay composed anymore. Tessa didn't miss a beat. She leaned forward and looked at me with this glint in her eyes that I couldn't shake off. Mia, she said, her voice smooth and condescending, don't you think it's time you stepped up your game? I mean, look at you. No wonder you're still alone. If you'd learned how to give people what they expect, maybe you'd have someone by your side too. It felt like the room was spinning. The words she'd said, so casually, dug into me. It wasn't just about the mansion, it was the underlying judgment. My family laughed. My parents chuckled awkwardly, clearly not wanting to upset the future bride. And Jared, well, he didn't do anything. Not a single word of defense. I stood there, my face burning with humiliation and frustration. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking. I can't do this, I finally muttered, my voice cracking. I looked at Jared, who didn't meet my eyes. I turned on my heel and walked out of their house without another word. I don't know what I expected after walking out, but I didn't expect the knot in my stomach to loosen. As I drove home that night, all I could think about was Tessa's words. No wonder you're still alone. It wasn't just a jab at my relationship status, it was a direct attack on my worth. I'd always been the quiet, self-sufficient one in the family. I wasn't flashy, I didn't care about status or appearances, and I didn't care to keep up with trends. But I never realized how much that would hurt me in their eyes. I went to bed that night with a storm brewing in my mind. I needed to do something. Something big. Something they wouldn't forget. I didn't sleep much. I couldn't. I kept replaying Tessa's words over and over, each time feeling the same sting. And then, an idea hit me. It was reckless, I knew, but I didn't care anymore. I had to make a point, a strong one. By morning, everything was set in motion. I'd contacted the right people, made the arrangements, and when they woke up, my family's bank accounts were empty. Every single one of them. Gone. The joint savings account. Trust funds. Investments. The money that they all took for granted. And on the kitchen table, I left a note. Respect isn't free. I'm not sure what to expect next. I haven't heard from Jared or Tessa yet, but I can only imagine the chaos this has caused. I don't regret it, though. I needed them to understand that they couldn't just demand respect. Not from me, not from anyone. Respect takes time, effort, and, most importantly, consideration for others. I'm still waiting for their call, their anger, or maybe their apology. But right now, all I know is that I've found my peace in doing something that was long overdue. And if they don't understand it, well, that's on them. The days following the bank transfers were a blur. I didn't exactly expect things to calm down right away, but the whirlwind that followed was intense, to say the least. Jared called me nonstop the first day. I could see his name lighting up my phone, his texts flooding in, each one more frantic than the last. But I didn't pick up. I couldn't. Not when I was so sure that they needed to feel the weight of what they'd done. I stayed at home, trying to go about my usual routine, but everything felt off. My phone was still blowing up with messages from friends and family, all of them trying to figure out what had happened. Apparently, I wasn't the only one in the dark about where all the money went. Jared hadn't told anyone about his financial situation, and neither had Tessa. I went about my day, making breakfast and forcing myself to stay calm. But I could feel the knot in my stomach every time I thought about what was happening. They had no idea yet how far this would go, how deep the betrayal ran. By the afternoon, things started escalating. My mom called me, and I could hear the panic in her voice. "Mia, what on earth happened?" she asked, her words sharp but filled with worry. "Why would you do something like this? What's going on?" "I told you, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Respect isn't free." Her silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost hear her thoughts. She wanted to understand, to make sense of it, but how could she? It was a huge leap, and I knew that. But my actions were no longer about money. This was bigger than money. "I don't understand, Mia. This isn't you. I raised you better than this. You don't just take people's money and walk away." "Mom, I didn't take it," I replied, my voice cold now. "I just made sure they knew the value of respect. That's all." There was a long pause. "But Jared..." I cut her off before she could finish. "Jared chose to stay silent, Mom. He stood there and let Tessa say what she did. He didn't speak up for me or for what was right." That got her attention. "Mia, what exactly did she say?" I could feel my chest tighten at the memory of it. "She told me I was still alone and that I needed to step up my game. She looked at me like I was beneath her, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't be the doormat. Not for her, and not for anyone." I could tell my mom was struggling to comprehend everything I was saying, but she also understood that I wasn't going to back down. "You should have talked to Jared first," she said, trying to reason with me. "I did talk to him, Mom," I snapped, my voice rising. "And he did nothing." The conversation ended with my mom saying she needed time to think. The guilt began to creep in. Maybe I was overreacting. But when I thought about everything Tessa had said, the way my family had laughed at her comments, the way Jared just stood there, I couldn't just let it go. Later that day, I got another call. This one was from my dad. "Mia," he started, his voice steady but firm. "What's going on? We need to talk. Jared is beside himself. You've done something really extreme here." "Dad, I'm sorry you think it's extreme," I replied, my tone calm now. "But I didn't do anything wrong. I just showed them the consequences of their actions. That's all." He sighed. "You've always been the quiet one, Mia. The one who never stirred the pot. Why now? Why this?" "Because I'm tired of being the quiet one," I said, the frustration building again. "Because no one listens to me, and Tessa crossed a line. I didn't even get a choice in the matter. It wasn't a request, it was a demand. And it wasn't just the mansion, it was her attitude, the way she looked down on me. Like I wasn't good enough." "I get it, Mia." "I do," my dad said, his voice softening. "But maybe there was another way. You don't know how this is going to affect things. You've done more than just shake the tree, you've knocked it over." I was silent for a moment, considering his words. I wasn't sure I could go back now. It felt like the point of no return had already passed. "What's done is done, Dad. I'm not going to apologize for taking a stand." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, I could hear him sigh deeply. "All right. We'll talk soon. Just think about it." The weight of their disappointment pressed on me, but I didn't regret my decision. As the day went on, I couldn't help but wonder if they'd finally understand what I was trying to say. They had grown so used to their privileged little bubble, where everything was easy, everything was catered to them. I had always played by the rules. I kept my distance, stayed out of the way, and kept my thoughts to myself. But no one had ever told them the truth about how they treated people, not even Jared. And Tessa? She just came in, expected everyone to fall in line, and demanded respect. It wasn't right. The following morning was the moment of reckoning. I had a sinking feeling when I woke up, a knot in my stomach that didn't seem to loosen no matter how much I tried to shake it off. The calls from Jared hadn't stopped, and now, there were messages from everyone, relatives, family, friends, even acquaintances, wondering what had happened. The first call came at 8 a.m. It was Jared, of course. His voice sounded strained, panic evident in every word. "Mia, what the heck did you do?" he demanded. "This is insane. Where's the money? Why would you do this to me?" "I think you already know why, Jared," I replied, my voice firm. "You let her, do this to me. To us. Mia, you can't just take everything and leave. You don't understand the mess this is causing. Our whole life is built on that money, on the things we've been promised. Do you realize what you've done?" "I realize exactly what I've done," I said, leaning against the counter. "And honestly, I don't feel sorry for it. You don't get to ask for things like that and expect people to just comply, especially not when you treat them like nothing." Jared was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, it wasn't with the same anger. It was quieter, more resigned. "So this is it? You're cutting me off?" "You're not being cut off," I said, "but you need to understand what it means to treat people with respect, Jared. Maybe losing something will teach you that. I can't fix this. You've made it worse. I didn't make this. You did. You chose her over your own family." There was a pause on the line, and then Jared said something that almost broke me. "I'm sorry, Mia. I should have done better. I didn't see how bad things had gotten." I hung up before he could say more. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of phone calls and messages, all of them trying to figure out how to fix the problem. Jared wasn't the only one desperate. His friends were texting me, begging for details, and the family was in a frenzy. But I didn't budge. Jared and Tessa would need to realize that the world doesn't revolve around them. They couldn't keep taking from others and expecting everything to be handed to them. It was time they learned that some things come at a price. As the day stretched on, things only escalated. The phone calls kept coming, but now, the tone had shifted. People weren't just confused or shocked, they were angry. Jared was calling more frequently, his voice increasingly desperate. He was trying to find out who I'd transferred the money to, trying to figure out what had happened. But I had already anticipated this. It wasn't the money that mattered to me anymore, it was the principle. By noon, Tessa called me. The sound of her voice sent a shiver down my spine, but I wasn't scared anymore. She wasn't the queen bee anymore. She was just a person now, scrambling to salvage what little she had left. "Mia, what the heck did you do?" she snapped, her tone dripping with frustration. "We're trying to make this work, and you are making everything harder than it needs to be. Do you even understand the position you've put me in?" I almost laughed. The position she's in? After everything she had put me through, after the way she had humiliated me, she had the audacity to act like the victim? "Tessa," I said coolly, "I'm not the one who demanded a mansion as a wedding gift. I'm not the one who insulted my family, who looked down on people because they didn't fit into your shiny little world." There was silence on the other end, and I could hear her breathe in, trying to compose herself. "Jared is a mess right now, Mia," she finally said, her voice now tinged with a touch of guilt. "This wasn't supposed to go like this." I waited. "You should have known better," I said, my tone cold and calm. "It wasn't just about money. You could have asked for a gift, a nice gesture. But you went too far, Tessa. And you know what? You got what you asked for. You wanted the mansion, and you wanted everything to be handed to you. But no one teaches you what it means to earn something. To work for it. And you'll never learn that if people just keep giving in." I could feel the weight of her realization sinking in through the phone. It was clear she hadn't thought through the consequences of her actions. She had expected to be in control, to keep everyone beneath her, and now, everything was spiraling out of her grasp. "I'll fix this," she muttered, her words clipped. "Jared and I we'll find a way." "You should have thought of that before," I said softly. Now, I'm going to let you two figure out how to solve your own mess." I hung up, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. The storm had passed, and now, all I could do was watch them fumble their way through the aftermath. That night, Jared showed up at my door. He looked broken. It wasn't the man I used to know. The confident, assertive older brother was gone. In his place was someone I barely recognized, someone who had been knocked down by the same people he had allowed to control him. "Mia," he said softly, before even knocking. "Can we talk?" I didn't immediately answer. I stood behind the door, looking at the old man I once knew through the crack. After a moment, I opened it, letting him in. He stood awkwardly in the living room, his hands stuffed into his pockets, his eyes avoiding mine. I could feel the tension, the discomfort, radiating off of him. "I don't know what to say, Mia," he said quietly. I should have stopped her. But I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. You were right. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him that he had failed me, failed all of us. But another part of me, the part that still loved him, could see the regret in his eyes. It wasn't too late for him to change. "I've been such a fool," he muttered. "I let her control everything. And now, I've lost everything. You, the family, the money, everything's a mess." "I told you, Jared," I said quietly, my voice steady now. "You can't just go along with things because it's easier. You can't let someone like her dictate everything about your life. It's not worth it." He nodded, his face downcast. "I'm sorry. I thought I could make it work, but I see now I was wrong. I didn't stand up for you, Mia. And I should have." I looked at him, trying to gauge whether he was sincere. I wanted to believe that he was truly sorry. And deep down, I knew he was. "Look, Jared," I said, my voice softer now, "I'm not doing this to hurt you. But sometimes, people have to learn the hard way. You can't just take everything for granted. Not love, not respect, not family. I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter." Jared nodded slowly. "I understand. I really do." For the first time in what felt like a long while, I felt a sense of closure. Maybe there was hope for Jared. Maybe he'd finally see how things were supposed to be. The next few days passed in a strange calm. I didn't hear from Tessa, which didn't surprise me. I wasn't sure where she went or what she was doing, but I knew she was probably feeling the sting of her actions. I couldn't help but wonder if she'd ever learn anything from this experience. But then again, maybe some people never do. Maybe she'd always be caught up in the game of status and wealth, never realizing that true respect doesn't come from what you can take, it comes from what you give. Jared, on the other hand, reached out a few times, apologizing again and asking if we could rebuild our relationship. I could tell he was genuinely trying, and for the first time in a while, I felt like he was really seeing me, seeing us, for who we were, not just for what we could provide. It wasn't easy to forgive him, but I knew it wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about growth. And maybe, just maybe, this would be the first step toward a better relationship between us. I didn't want anything from him. No mansion, no extravagant gifts. I didn't need any of that. What I needed was something simple: honesty, respect, and love. Things that had always been there, buried under the weight of expectations. The last time I saw Jared and Tessa together was at a family gathering a few months later. Tessa, while still perfectly poised, seemed more subdued. She didn't have the same air of superiority she once had, and I could tell it bothered her. She tried to be friendly, but I could tell there was still tension. Jared, however, was more present. He made an effort to talk to me, to reconnect. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Jared had learned the lesson, and that was enough for me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The air was clear, and the heavy weight that had been on my chest for so long was finally gone. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I had taken a stand, and in the end, it was more than enough. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real victory feels like.